the Rockets are on this 9-game win streak, and they have maintained their standing in the West. At
Tried to tell
one
you.
time, it felt like, losing streak, they're going to fall in the standings, but then they quickly turned that around. Since the all or on this 9-game win streak, the Rockets are seventh in offensive rating, first in defensive rating, fourth in net rating. The teams they've played: the Pelicans twice, the Magic, Suns, Mavericks, Bulls, Sixers, Magic, Heat. Not the best competition, but they're 11-6 against other playoff West teams. So this is a team that plays up to the competition. 7 players averaging double figures in this 9-game win streak. And I feel like the Rockets are the toughest team to put a pulse on because they're young. We haven't seen them yet. We feel like maybe they're like the easiest opponent for most veteran experienced West teams. But what if they're just flat out awesome and they're as good as their record indicates, and they're not this kind of pushover that we kind of talk about them like in the lens of that way where, okay, if you're a veteran team, you kind of feel comfortable playing the Rockets. That's kind of the matchup that you rather have over Denver, over a Memphis. But the Rockets are a tough team to kind of put my finger on because I think that they're winning in a right way. They're shooting the three ball really well. They're eighth in 3-point percentage since the All-Star break at 36%. I don't know. I don't know what to think of them. I think part of me really wants to say they're great, but I don't feel confident in that.
So,
Thanks. Appreciate you, bro. I'm with you, bro. I think it's okay to call them a great regular season team. I think they've earned that right. I think they've established themselves as that this season. Just being a top 3 seed, being having a over 500 record against top competition in the league, just being one of the best defenses in basketball. They've definitely earned that right to call them a great team in the regular season. But when you look at it from a much bigger lens, you got to think great team means they can perform well in the playoffs. Great team mean they can get to the WCF, and they have had. They're probably going to walk into the playoffs with the weirdest resume in terms of just a team that can make a WCF and team that can make a championship. They have a high powered defense. Their offense leaves a lot to be desired, but they'll probably be walking into the playoffs one of the hottest teams in the league. And then they have a top seed, so they have home court advantage, which is extremely important, especially for a young team to have home court advantage, be able to play at home, feel more comfortable there. This is a team that's hard to project because, what if there's a world where this offense is fluttered, they can't handle the pressure, the experience is too much, and they lose. What if they say F experience, we've been playing like this all year, and then they start to beat teams we thought they couldn't beat, since they'll have a high seed. They won't play a juggernaut. Well, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but right now we're looking at the seeding. They won't play Denver, they won't play the Lakers, they won't play OKC. And they played all those other teams, Memphis, Golden State, Minnesota, the Clippers. They played all of them well. So they're going to walk in with extra confidence. And this is a team it's built well on the defensive end to where them games in the playoffs aren't going to be these pretty 115, 120, 30 games, in my opinion. I think these can be some ugly 105s, 110s. Maybe we'll sneak in a 98, 99. We had that in the in-season tournament game with the Rockets. They scored that low. I think it was Golden State. Yes, it was a game against Golden State. But yeah, we can see that if they go into those games, the way they're scrappy, the way they can score, in just scrappy, ugly ways, the way they crash the glass, they have a lot of young players that want to prove something. So I feel like I'm talking forever. But yeah, that's it.
great job. I look at the Rockets, and when we spoke about our tiers list, I said something that is going to be similar to what I'm about to say now. I look at last year's OKC team, and it's very obvious the Rockets are this year's OKC of last. Now, I was very high on Oklahoma City. They had a top 5 player in the world in SGA. They had one of the better supporting cast. Chet Holmgren broke onto the scene and made them one of the elite defenses. J-Dub broke out. He was one of the best 3-level scorers last season, especially when it comes to efficiency. They had this all-around great team, and I was on the train. I was excited for them. They were the first seed. They had home court advantage like you're talking about, Riv, especially for that young team. We really started to build all this hype around them. They had more, and they disappointed us. The Rockets are a great young team, a great defensive sounded team. They don't have a player like SGA, but they are a very disciplined defense with a lack of consistent offense and at least a lack of consistent number one option. There's been nights where Jalen Green's great. There's been nights where Jalen Green's not. You have nights in this win streak where you have Fred VanVleet going off. You have nights where it's Sengun's night. You have nights where it's Jalen Green's night, but it's never somebody consistently on a night-to-night basis getting theirs while also being efficient. In this win streak, of course, we have to acknowledge 9 games are 9 games. It does not matter. You have to go up against whoever is listed on your schedule, and they've gone out there and they've performed. I really want to be excited about them. I told you there was a part of me that wanted to put them as a team that can go into the Western Conference because, again, it doesn't matter who they go up against. They put their best foot forward like Oklahoma City did last year. And I got fooled last year, and there's a part of me that does not want to be fooled again and would rather be proved wrong in that facet, but appreciate what we're watching because it's always great to see new kids on the block kind of have their time to shine. But again, I don't see them being as good as last year's Oklahoma City team for them to be the one to surprise me and make a nice, strong playoff push. That's kind of where I have my reservations about their long-term playoff success. But this is a great team. This is a team that has a great future. They have obviously strong discipline on the defensive side. You know that you're going to get that on a night-to-night basis because Ime Udoka forces that out of his players. And they've really done a great job. Tari Eason really has been one of my favorite role players this season for what he's able to do on offense and, of course, on that defensive side. There's so many positives for them, especially how great they are against some of the best teams in the league. It's just that experience. It really matters in the postseason. And I learned that firsthand from watching a better Oklahoma City team last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's positive for Houston right now is we know how great the defense is. They've been the number one defense over this 9-game stretch. They've been one of the best defense, all season, not just looking at this one little cohort, but they've also the top 7 offense over this stretch too. And as Drew mentioned, it's not just one guy, right? Jalen Green, I think over these 9 games, Jalen Green's been the leading scorer 3 times, Jabari twice, and then the 4 other games it's been some combination of Tari or Fred or someone else. But they have 7 players over these 9 games averaging somewhere from 15 to 20 points per game. So there's not this massive gap between the leading scorer, who's been Jalen Green averaging 20 flat, and like Jabari or Fred, whoever who was 7th, but at like 15.2. So they've been getting pretty consistent offense for their top 7 rotational guys. And of course, Steven Adams gets in the mix. A few different guys down the line that isn't giving you much offense, but just in the rotation. But it's really those 7 guys that you're going to live by and you're going to die by. When it comes to what they look like in a playoff setting, because I do want to give them credit for what they're doing in the regular season. Because I do think in the beginning of the year, we gave them so much credit, which deserved. They were the top 2 seed for a while. And then they went on a losing streak, which included some tough losses, right? They lost a couple of games to the Brooklyn Nets. They lost against the Timberwolves before the Timberwolves started going on their winning streak, and they weren't playing great basketball. They even lost to the Jazz, right before this winning streak, really started first happening. So they were dropping some games against competition that I think are pretty comfortably better than. So you still have to give them credit for these games, even though it hasn't been top of the line. But playoff time, I think it's interesting because I agree with Riv for the most part. I think these games that they're going to go up against, regardless of who it is, you're going to be in dogfights where the top scoring team probably is going to be scoring more than 107, 108, 109 points. It's going to be mostly low scoring, and this team is going to compete every single possession on the defensive end, and that's what's going to keep them in these games. What's going to make it or break it to them is really in these fourth quarters, who are they going to get them buckets down the stretch? Or what player is going to be stepping up? Is it going to be Jalen Green? Is it going to be Fred hitting a big 3? Are you going to have the ball in Men Thompson's hands trying to get him downhill to get somebody over? You could, throw the ball out to Dylan Brooks in a corner so he could hit a 3, as he's been doing at a 40% clip this year. That's really the biggest question. I think that's the one thing that's holding me back, and I'm sure holding a lot of other people back, is when it gets to crunch time, they still don't really have a guy. And that's fine because they're so young and they've been overperforming this year in the regular season that it's fine if they go out in the first round. I don't really look at it as a huge disappointment unless they get swept or they lose in 5 or uncompetitive 6. But if they're competitive in every game like I'm expecting them to, if they're competitive like they've been basically all season long, and they just lose because they don't have the best player in the fourth quarter, I can't really get too mad. But what you're seeing over these 9 games is just what they've been doing for majority of the season. They're defending their ass off, right? They're been the best defense, like I mentioned. They have so many different defenders that they could throw at you. And then when the time comes, they have multiple guys that can score. They're not super reliant on one guy, even though you're looking at Jalen Green as that prominent scorer. They have multiple guys that could give you 20 any given night. And it makes it more difficult to game plan against because usually you have one guy. Obviously, it's not easy to guard Shea, but for example, you're going up against the Thunder. It's like we know Shea's going to have the ball majority of the time, and he's going to get his 35, and it's impossible to guard. The Rockets are obviously easier to guard, but the fact that they have 7 different guys that can attack you in multiple different ways, it presents a bit of a different challenge. But I still wonder what their offensive ceiling is in the playoffs, because I do think it's going to get nasty. And if that's the case, you just have to be on their ass every single possession on defense. You have to be forcing turnovers. You have to be getting out in transition. And they're great at most of that stuff. So I do think they're going to present difficult matchups for certain teams. But their overall, like, what did they look like in the playoffs? I'm still hesitant to put them in like a tier 1 or even really like a top of a tier 2 contender.
They have the most clutch wins in basketball this year, but they've also have played in the 3rd most clutch games this season. And those things can kind of swing and vary. But I think it just shows like a team that they've shown to win these moments for the most part. And I think my biggest reason for optimism is that everybody's playing well. Jalen Green, the efficiency is always going to fluctuate with him, but he's played well, especially over the last 5 or 6 games. Sengun's playing well. Jabari's playing well. Tari Eason's playing well. Fred VanVleet is playing well. There's really not a player not playing well right now. Dylan Brooks is playing well. Amen Thompson, last games he's been back. We just saw what he did to the Heat, getting his revenge on Tyler Hero yesterday. So they're all playing exceptional basketball. If there was one player from the Rockets that you're picking to take the biggest step forward in the playoffs, who would it be?
Who should take the biggest step? I mean, realistically,
who will?
Amen. For me, it's Amen.
I'm taking Amen too.
It has to be Amen. Like Drew was, I'm sure Drew was probably going to say who needs to. For me, who needs to and who will is the same person. It's Amen Thompson. It
needs to be Jalen Green. Like if they want to,
it needs to be Jalen Green. That's the answer. I thought that's what you were going to say.
Oh, I say who needs to, because he needs to start solidifying himself as the franchise guy for that team. And I think him needing to and him wanting to and him doing it in the playoffs is going to kind of put him in the company where, like, all right, I feel like they already think that, but like now he needs to really put his foot down on it, because he's had the most improvement on his team in the past 2 years than most of these guys. And some of them have been there before him, you know, like Jalen Green, like Jabari. I think all of them. No, yeah, all of them have been there before him. And he has seen the most growth in his game. It hasn't even been a full year yet, and you can see the extended growth in his game. I mean, he's been a workhorse, and I think, you know, he's the best defender on the team. I think he's the best in transition. You know, I think he's starting to get better in his half-court offense, you know, working on it. He's definitely a different type of athlete. He jumps higher than probably Ant and John Morant, and is just as fast as John Wall and De'Aaron Fox at 6'7". Like, he's a uber different type of athlete. So I think it needs to be him.
I think the answer is that it will be Amen. I think that it needs to be Jalen Green. Jalen Green, in a moments in the playoffs, you need a guy that's going to isolate and going to get a bucket, and that's going to be Jalen Green more often than not. That's not Amen's game.